Today, we are doing the lesson a bit differently. I'm having you, and you should have just done the first question on your Google form, which were the warm-up, that involved the warm-up and involved some questions about arrays, which are the arrays that you saw were depictions of rectangular numbers. And we'll get on to that. But let's just go through the warm-up quick. You did see the answers, but this is how they were rounded. 61 divided by 3, I would estimate it as, I would round 61 to 60. 60 divided by 3 is 20. Then I would round 641 to 640. 640 divided by 8 is 80. Because 8 times 8 is 64, and then you just add a 0. And the next one is 1,946 divided by 200. I just round the 1,946 to 2,000 divided by 200, I'll get 10. Okay, next, the math message. What are 3 things you notice about these arrays? You could have written a lot of different things, but you could see that they are rectangular. They are definitely not square. Each of those arrays, the first and the second and the third, have an even number of cubes. This has 2, this has 6, and this has 12. Each array adds 1 row and 1 column. If you notice, you have, for example, this is the first one. It has 1 row and 2 columns. Then the next one has 2 rows and 3 columns. Right? So there was 1 row here, 2 rows here, increased by 1. This had 2 columns here. This has 3 columns, so the columns increased by 1. So if there's 2 columns on this one here, if there's going to be 2 rows here, there's going to be 3 rows at the next one, rather. And since there were 3 columns here, there's going to be 4 columns here. Now, how would we come up with the next array? Well, we just increase the columns by 1 and the rows by 1. This one here has 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So the next one, to get the next one, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns, because that's an increase by 1. And I'm going to have 4 rows, because there's 3 over here. I'm going to have 4 rows over here. All right, so these, the 3 arrays below, these are the same ones from the other page, represent the first 3 rectangular numbers. Rectangular numbers are numbers that can be represented by rectangular arrays. In each successive rectangular number, the number of rows and columns increased by 1. Well, here we see that the first array represents the rectangular number 2. There's 2 cubes. The second array here represents the rectangular number 6, because you can put 6 objects and they will fit into a rectangular array pattern. That's why it's a rectangular number. Now this next number is 12, because there's 12 cubes. So 12 can be put into an array which is rectangular. So that's why it's called a rectangular number. So what would be the next rectangular number? Well, remember that the number of rows is going to increase by 1, and the number of rows is going to increase by 1. The number of columns is going to increase by 1. So since there's 1, 2, 3 rows here, the next one will have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows here. And how many columns? Well, this one had 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So that should mean that this next one will have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the next rectangular number. The rectangular is sitting on the different way, but it's still rectangular. So that's 4 by 5. So the next rectangular number is 20. So you could come up with the next rectangular number by making up the next array. So the next array, you'd have to say, well, my next array is going to have how many rows? Well, this has 4 rows, so the next row will have 5 rows. And It will have 5 rows and 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And then the columns will be 6. So that means that the next rectangular number will be 30 because it'll be 5 times 6, so that'll be 30. So, right. Okay, so what's the next part here? Whoa, now we're getting out of the rectangular numbers and into the square numbers. These are some square numbers here. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. Now if you notice, I've got an array here with 1 in it, and then I've got an array here with 4 in it. You notice it's not rectangular in shape when I put this square number into an array, this 4 into an array. It's a square array. So they're making square, these numbers will make square arrays. See if you can look at those 1, 4, 9, 16, 25 and figure out if you can figure out what they have in common and maybe a rule for finding the next square. All right, why don't you answer the next few questions and then we'll have another video.